Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Psychocinematic. Today we are covering Signs, written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. All right, before we get into all this, believe it or not, this was my first time watching Signs, which is crazy because I'm a movie fan, have a psychological thriller movie podcast, and I love aliens, so it didn't seem right that I hadn't seen it. It has been on my to-do list for a while to watch this movie, and I thought, what better thing to do than to cover it on here? So the first thing that was crazy about this movie is the actual crop circles. They did that for real, and it's so crazy that it can be that precise and symmetrical. And M. Night was saying he was using inspiration from actual crop circles that we've seen all throughout the world. And it is pretty crazy, but he wanted to do it in corn stalk fields rather than wheat fields because corn stalk is way harder to take down. It's not, as malleable as wheat would be. So that would make it seem more eerie because it would be a lot harder for it to be man-made. So something that I didn't initially catch, and I saw this on the IMDb page, was in the very beginning when it's showing the farm. You hear all the crickets and then the crickets stop when Graham wakes up from his sleep, meaning that there is a presence here and the crickets are aware of it and now he's awake too. So it's just this super ominous feel. I didn't catch the crickets. So we first see that the dog is sick and Bo, the daughter, is talking about how the water is contaminated. And I was like, oh, maybe the aliens are coming down here and poisoning our water. But really it's just foreshadowing the fact that our water melts these aliens, so it's contaminated for them. I had to play this part back because when the dog is growling at the kids, I was like, that would be pretty scary to have in person. But something looked a little off to me when I was watching it, so I had to play it back, and I was like, oh yeah, they definitely green screened that dog in there, or they rotoscoped it, which is basically just cutting out that dog. And so that's two different shots. And so the kids are just looking where someone's telling them, this is a dog. I mean, that would make sense, so you're not risking these kids getting hurt by a angry German Shepherd. And speaking of the kids, Morgan looked kind of familiar to me, and thanks to Amazon Prime for always showing the cast up there, I saw that his last name was Culkin, and I was like, oh, he's Macaulay Culkin's brother. And then Bo, the little girl, you probably recognize her too. That's Abigail Breslin. It's kind of crazy how there's so many big names in here, like Joaquin Phoenix, who plays the uncle. He looks so young in this movie. It's crazy. When you see him today in Joker versus then, you're just like, wow, this man, I know he dropped 50 pounds and there's about a 20-year difference there. It's crazy how time and a different role that a good actor plays can completely transform how you see a person. All right, so now we've reached the scene where they see the alien standing on the roof and they think it's just an intruder or the person who vandalized their cornfield. So they're going out there to scare him away, and Meryl is telling Graham that you need to go out there and you need to curse. He's like, oh, define curse or whatever. So it's really funny, the juxtaposition of what they are yelling as they run around the house. Now, this movie seems to be one of the only movies where a police officer doesn't want to just jump to conclusions, because the sheriff or the officer that was there, she was saying, we don't know anything about this person, so we should leave all options open, which I feel like that never happens. They're just like, no, we know for sure all of our three facts in this movie point directly at this one person, so it's gotta be that person. And that just wasn't the case in this movie, and I thought that was refreshing. So it's around this time that we learned that Graham has left the church. He's no longer a reverend, and I initially thought, I was like, how cool is that they made him a reverend? Because if there's anyone who's going to deny aliens, there's a good chance that it could be someone who believes in one of the main religions. And I'm not saying that's for everyone, because I think you could definitely believe in aliens and then Jesus, for example. But if there was someone who's going to shoot it down quick, you would probably expect it to be a man of faith who is a leader of a church. Now, at this point in the movie, the news stations are reporting of the signs in crop fields and all that all across the globe. And I had no idea it was going to be like that. I thought it was seriously going to be just this family kind of being tormented by aliens is just kind of located here on this farm. Maybe no one believe them. Maybe they die. Maybe they get abducted or whatever. I didn't know it was going to be this worldwide phenomenon. Now, when they follow the sheriff's recommendation to go into town, they have a lot of aerial views, and it really is cool because it starts to make you think about the man-made signs on the ground and all the patterns that we create. And I'm sure you've experienced this if you've flown on an airplane, you look down at just the patterns that we have with lots of land. But I just thought it was cool that they immediately go into shots like that after just covering the news shots of these signs in crop fields. And there was a theory floating around amongst people that there was someone pulling a prank, made these crop circle signs, and then a bunch of copycats all around the world started doing the same thing to try and create this giant hoax. Maybe it's possible back then, but I think if it were ever going to happen, that would be way easier now with social media. You could organize that so quickly. It would be crazy. And people would be doing it if it was like a TikTok challenge. Oh, go out there and destroy your neighbor's crops and make something that's symmetrical and creepy and make them think it's an alien. I could see that today. When Meryl is talking to that army recruiter, he's hearing how in the army they would send out probes, basically to send a few people out there to see if it's safe for the rest of the people to come. So they're kind of floating that around as like maybe the aliens are sending a few down and then the real wave will begin after that, which is a terrifying idea. And now cue the M. Night cameo. M. Night plays the man who killed Graham's wife. Now, when they get back from town, they have the baby monitor and they're catching frequencies. They're like, oh, the aliens are talking to each other or whatever. And this is shot in 2001, came out in 2002. But I remember when my family had my two sisters in 2006 and 2008, they had a baby monitor then too. And the technology was just okay then too, and we caught random frequencies all the time and it would sound like alien invasion. I just wasn't as impressed. As like, that could be something that's not actually happening, but I mean, it turns out it was legit in the movie. But if that were me at the time, I might brush that one off. Now it's nighttime again and Graham is looking at the cornfield, and just as I was thinking, is there anything creepier than a cornfield at night, he shines a flashlight on the cornfield, and then I was like, nope. Instantly corrected. That is creepier because there's a bunch of shadows being cast, and as you move that light, then the shadows are moving and you can't tell what's moving, what's not. I like that they use a cornfield. It's just so intimidating and it's tall and you can't see through it. And we've probably all experienced going in through a corn maze, and it can get a little creepy if you're doing it at night and then if you get lost in there. I don't think, however, we could all relate to seeing an alien's leg in the cornfield. That would be terrifying. But at the same time, everything there, including the alien leg, kind of looks like corn. So you would probably be freaking out, not knowing if you actually saw what you saw. But I mean, Graham didn't question it at all, which was pretty sweet. And now at this point, they're seeing UFOs across the world on the news. And I was wondering, how would the world react to this? I mean, sure, the government has recently come out, like the Pentagon has, said, oh yeah, this is otherworldly craft, or it's craft not from our world. But there's a lot going on at this time and no one really cares, it seems like. 2020 was one of the most climactic years. And along those same lines of it being 2020, I saw how we reacted with the toilet paper. Now, how would we react having nonstop confirmations around the world that we have UFOs? And we don't know what they're doing? That would be terrifying. Here's what I don't get though. You just saw an alien leg. You're now seeing confirmations that UFOs are happening. You've seen the signs and you guys are just sitting chill on the couch, a little worried, they're worried. They have a sign in their own property. There was someone on their roof. How is this farmhouse just not strapped to the gills waiting for aliens to come in? Like, I understand that they are a religious family, but I feel like a country family, religion or not, would have nothing but shotguns and rifles and would be like, I dare you, come and try it. So here's where we get to the real meat of the meaning of the movie and the whole point of it. And that is that Graham believes there's two kinds of people. The people that believe in the miracles and they think that everything is basically a sign of hope for them, or they can use it as hope. And then the other people who think that things just happen, there's coincidences, and they're on their own in this world. And so it's basically a glass half full, a glass half empty. And at first you just don't know which group that he fits into, but then you realize that he belongs in group 2, and his reasoning is that when his wife died, her last words were this nonsense babble about tell Meryl to swing, like he was at one of his minor league baseball games again. And then you start to realize that's why he's walked away from his faith, because he does not like the way that his life has gone, doesn't understand why his wife was taken from him. And that makes sense. I mean, I feel like anyone would probably be in that same position and kind of just like, curse you world, curse you God, or whatever you believe in. A little sidebar though, that story that Meryl tells about why he's a miracle man, how he dodged that bullet of being thrown up on or in his mouth by that woman he was going to kiss. That was a hilarious story. Nice comedic relief for a doom and gloom movie. Now they're looking at Morgan's book that he got about aliens, and they have these artworks that are pretty crazy. You know, you see the UFO flying away from these bodies and whatnot. First of all, I was just like, oh no, like, is that, you know, them foreshadowing that this family is going to die from these aliens by the end of it? That was all pretty crazy. But a little fun fact, apparently that was M. Night's kids' artwork for this movie. Okay, when Graham goes to talk to Ray, which is M. Night's character, the man who killed Colleen, his wife, that was a strange interaction. I felt like by the end of it, M. Night's character was going to go kill himself, but then he says he's going to go to the lake, and then just so nonchalantly says, oh, and don't go into the pantry, I locked an alien in there. It's like, what? I mean, I would have loved to see what that interaction looked like. How do you trick an alien to go into your pantry? Or maybe was the alien eating food in there and you walked in? I have no idea. But I mean, that's pretty badass. Now, I thought it was pretty clever that Graham used that knife to try and peer under the door to see the alien. But at the same time, I was like, but do you really want to risk putting that in there and then getting it swiped and then the alien stabs you? Though I'm sure the aliens can do way worse than stab you. But then I was like, you know what? This alien did get locked in a pantry, and if this thing can't get out of a locked pantry, is it really that dangerous? So there's still news reporting going on, but I don't know, would anyone continue working in the news if this were really happening? I know if I were a news anchor, I'd be like, no, I don't know the intentions of these aliens. Might as well try and survive and live out maybe the last of your days with your friends and family. Okay, when you see that full body shot of the alien, it sucks because this part was ruined for me on the day of. So frustrating. I mean, I've literally gone all my life without seeing a spoiler. And then someone who I used to go to high school with on Facebook posted this meme of that and saying, I lost a ton of sleep as a child because of this scene in Signs. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Now I know what these aliens look like. I was looking forward to that suspense and not even knowing if they were going to show us what the alien was. I mean, what are the odds of that? Okay, they barely start eating, then they hear the frequency on the baby monitor. They go check the TV and they've got that alarm going on. And then Graham says, it's happening. And then cue M. Night writing down the name of one of his next movies, The Happening. And then we see Graham saying his last words to Colleen. And I actually started to tear up at this point because that was so brutal. The fact that she's mostly severed, but still talking, and she's just basically laying on the hood of a car. That's absolutely tragic. And I just couldn't imagine being in that scenario. So kudos to M. Night for having such a crazy, powerful scene there. And now this movie comes full circle because Graham realizes that Colleen wanted him to tell Meryl to swing away on the alien that's got his son. And then also the asthma that his son has is protecting him from the poison that the alien shoots into his face. And it's so funny that this alien just has this grudge against him for getting his fingers chopped off. I mean, I get it. That would really suck, but it's funny that pretty much all the aliens have left except for this one who's like, I'm gonna get you. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly. So now Graham realizes that everything is a miracle. He's back on the group one side and all is well with the world. They saved their son because they realized that water, the contaminated water, basically melts alien flesh. And that leads me into the joke moral of the story of this movie, which is, you know, all those little water glasses that you have on your bedside table, or maybe in your living room, your kitchen, that you just never seem to put in the dishwasher. Maybe you should leave them out. Maybe you should leave them full because it could save your life from an alien invasion. All right, now getting into the alien visual effects, I definitely think that they should have shot it more practically rather than visual effects. Apparently, this was M. Night's first experience with CGI in a movie, and he was saying how difficult it was, and basically the crew had to double, and he didn't realize how much work it was going to be and how many people need to be involved to do the visual effects for this. And the reason I wish they would have shot it more practically is because it would hold up better today. Because, sure, the visual effects were starting to get good around that time, but now that it's been 20 years since that movie's come out, I mean, it's night and day, and I'm sure we'll be saying the same thing 20 years from now about the movies today. And here's the thing. The VFX house that worked on this movie is ILM, and that's the VFX house that George Lucas founded in the 70s, and they've worked on some of the biggest movies. And it's funny because before I knew that ILM worked on this movie, I was said that they should have done it a little bit more like Jurassic Park. So had, someone in a suit or, using like an animatronic something, they just shouldn't have done so much visual effects because, Jurassic Park, which is older than that movie, holds up way better today because they did a lot of it practically. And that's the shame about this movie. Though I did watch a little bit of an in-depth look at how they did all the visual effects, and I definitely have a lot more respect for it. It is actually pretty cool the lengths that they went to and how the art team created this alien and how they went back and forth with M. Night and the VFX house trying to really nail that camouflage effect that they have on their skin. I didn't even realize at the scene at the end that you can see the cloaking happening on the backside of the alien when you can see Bo screaming. Now, of course, we saw the hand changing on the plaid pattern when it was holding the little boy, but that is a cool detail in itself too. But apparently they wanted to not be too mystical with it, with the cloaking, and I think this look right here is actually pretty terrifying and would have definitely made me jump had it happened in the movie. Now, another thing with the visual effects and the look of the alien is I just wish they didn't show the alien so much. So not only are you having to compensate with the VFX that just aren't as good back then, but now we're staring at the alien a lot. And sure, it's silhouetted and shadowed often, but the longer I look at this thing, the less I'm creeped out by it. I get more creeped out on the not knowing or just the subtle sight, the foot in the cornfield, the figure on the roof, and even borderline was that shot of the alien walking past that alleyway, then it finally shows the full body. That might have even been too much for me. So it kind of cheapens the scares or the thrills for me, but I don't know. Maybe you feel different. Overall, I really like this movie, and I feel like it's not often that we get any kind of good alien movie, especially when we see the alien. I think this movie had a great story, ended well, and had a great meaning to it. And this movie didn't scare me as much as I had hoped, but I'm sure it would have had I seen it back when it was brand new in 2002. I think we get a little desensitized to these things, and especially when you can tell an alien looks fake, that kind of pulls you out of the story for a little bit. So with all things considered, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it 74% and the audience gave it 67%. And that's all I have for you guys today on the movie Signs. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Psychocinematic, and comment down below if you think aliens are real and if you think that they have been to Earth yet, if they are real. I'm really curious to hear everyone's answers, and I think yes and maybe. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.